All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here alongside Conor Neville of RTÉ Sport Online. We're on RTÉ.ie, YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, among others. Former Ireland international Keith Treacy and former St. Pat's and Shelbourne midfielder Conan Byrne joined us today as well. Lots to discuss, including the Champions League final, which will be live on RT2 and the RT Player on Saturday night, and plenty of League of Ireland action. But where we're going to start first is the Ireland squad that was named last week for the games against Greece, which are next Friday, and then the following game against Gibraltar at home. And Conor, I suppose at this point, there's not a huge amount of surprises in terms of selection.
No, not really. I mean, we see Jack Taylor has been called up. I suppose the biggest news is Ogbene's injury, which has kept him out, which is a big blow given how well he played against France. He was a real outlet for Ireland, particularly the way they played that night. And without Coleman and Amabamidele, so yeah, and Callum Robinson too. So it's hard to judge these squads so far out from a window. You know, it's not really until we see the initial team name that we get the shape of what he's thinking about. So I mean, that's where it'll really count. These squads really there aren't a lot of surprises if you exclude injuries and all the rest. I know there was a lot of talk about Tom Cannon being potentially included, and he wasn't, and Kenny is happy for him to plow away with the under-21s. So I hope that doesn't come back to haunt us. But yeah, not too many surprises.
Yeah, and Jack Taylor is one of those that's called up, although he's been in the squad before. Keith, in terms of Kenny picking him, it seems what really impressed him was the fact that he was involved with Peterborough in the League One playoffs, and obviously first leg of that against Sheffield Wednesday, they won 4-0, and then obviously the devastation of losing 5-1 and on penalties in the second leg, and yet he still made a point to come into Bristol for the training camp, and that seems to be an added bonus in terms of Kenny respecting his mentality.
Yeah, I think Stephen Kenny has tried to reward him. Obviously, he's had a very decent season with Peterborough, but real sucker punch to get to the way the season finished for him. But I do like him as a player. I do think he will come into the Irish squad. But I said this before, this is deep water now for lads who haven't played for Ireland before. So I just feel you have a personal responsibility to players that when you put them into the squad in these big games, you can't just throw them in. There is certain players you do. There is exceptions to the rule, but I just think if you throw Jack Taylor in there and he doesn't do well, you'd be thinking, I sort of seen this one coming. So, look, his Ireland career is all in front of him. I do think this would be great for him to be in and around European qualifiers, get a feel of what the squad is like, how you prepare for these big games, and just learn. And look, I just think it's deep water. But I reading what Stephen Kenny said about the training camp in Bristol, I think this is just a little bit of a pat on the back saying, listen, I think you've been excellent this season, doing really well to come in, because people don't want to hear this, but a lot of players at the end of the season, when you get asked to come to a training camp, whether they play for Ireland or not, they're more or less going to back out of it, you know. So for Jack Taylor, with that sickening feeling in his stomach at the end of the season, to say, listen, I'll go again and I'll train well. Clearly, he did train well in Bristol. Stephen Kenny's impressed from him. He's getting a little bit of a pat on the back saying we'll bring you into the squad, but I have to be honest, I'd be very, very surprised if Jack Taylor got any minutes on the pitch. And that's not because I don't think he's up to it. I just think it's just a little bit too early in his Irish career to be throwing him into the deep end just yet.
Yeah, and Coleman, obviously Seamus Coleman being out, there's in terms of the depth at right wing back, Matt Doherty's obviously first in line to start, but it's interesting, Mark Sykes, who tends to play a little bit further forward for Bristol City and previously for Oxford, is listed as a defender. So, and I presume this is in line with him being the next in line, either him or Alan Brown, who's also filled in that position from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously really disappointing that Seamus Coleman is out injured for these games, but Matt Doherty is probably going to be in that position. It's just like, again, he's played only a couple of minutes since his move from Spurs to Atletico Madrid. You'd expect him to get some game time in that period, and unfortunately, it was absolutely horrendous move for him. So his match sharpness wouldn't be up to speed, but yeah, like you said there, Mark Sykes. Obviously, Stephen Kenny has seen potential for him in that role. Alan Brown has played there before as well. He's done particularly well in previous games. So there is a bit of depth to that right wing back position, albeit maybe not the quality of Seamus Coleman, because he likes to play Coleman and Doherty over the last number of games, and they've done really, really well. But it's further up the pitch that I'm really excited about, Raf. Mikey Johnson obviously did really, really well. He got the crowd on the edge of their feet the last time he was playing the Aviva. Really, really exciting. Evan Ferguson, the way he's been playing in the Premier League has been absolutely sensational. Great to see how he will get on against the two teams. So yeah, exciting times over the next couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, and as you mentioned up front, Conan, and the options that are there's a lot of striking options in terms of who can play off Evan Ferguson if they're going with this 5-3-2, which would be the expectation. So who would you like to see partner him for Greece? Because it's obviously a very different challenge to Gibraltar.
Yeah, it is. And obviously you have Adam Ida, you have Troy Parrott, you have Michael Obafemi. And I think out of those three, I think Stephen Kenny is really keen on Obafemi. He scores goals, he holds the ball up really well, he brings others into play. But having said that, is he too similar to Evan Ferguson in that way in terms of bringing the ball into play? Obviously, Ferguson will score the goals. Hopefully, he'll be the out-and-out centre forward, and Obafemi will drop in, and as I said, bring others into play. So, if you're asking me who I think he'll go for, I think it'll be Obafemi.
Yeah, and Keith, in terms of the overall starting 11, who would you like to see picked in that 11, or who do you expect to see lining out in Athens, injury permitting?
I don't think it'd be too dissimilar to what he's generally done, Raf. I think he'll play three centre halves with the two wing backs, and it's just whether or not he goes Ferguson up front alone, or whether he does put Obafemi with him. And I'd be very similar to Conan, and I'd like to see Ferguson and Obafemi start together. But Obafemi, I wouldn't tell him to come to the ball. I'd tell him to stay away from the ball. I'd let Ferguson come and drop into the hole. And every time Ferguson goes into the hole, Obafemi has to be on the shoulder of the other centre half, stretching the game that way. So I just think we give ourselves an option in behind and we give ourselves an option short. And it doesn't always have to be Ferguson dropping into that hole, but 9 times out of 10, you'd want Evan coming getting the ball and you'd want Obafemi stretching them. So I don't think there'll be any great surprises. Like James McLean, will he get in and play the game? That would get him up to 99 caps, and then he'll get his 100th cap against Gibraltar. So I do think we'll see James McLean at some point. Whether he starts at left wing back, I'm not too sure. But I don't think there'll be any great surprises. I think we're starting to understand what we're going to get from a Stephen Kenny Irish team. And look, the one thing for me is the possession is going to be, especially the Greece game away, possession is going to be at a premium. If you lose the ball there, it's going to be so hot. You're going to be running around chasing shadows. So we have to keep the ball. We have to use the dark arts really, really well, kill the clock when we can, take our time over things. But the one thing is, I would love us to get an early goal. That way we can kill it. We can frustrate the Greeks. And look, the Greece team aren't as bad as what people think they are. People think, oh, yeah, it'll be hot, it'll be difficult. But Greece aren't bad, lads. They really aren't bad. And we're not any great shape either, to be honest with us. So I think that'll be a really tough game. I'm giving us 3 points against Gibraltar. I know what happened there the last time, but I'm assuming we're going to go and beat Gibraltar. So the one for me is Greece away. If we can get 6 points out of these 2 games, I think we're in with a fighting chance of getting second. But if we come out with 6 points, I'm not so sure. I think the Greece game is a big one. But in terms of the selection, Raf, I don't think it'll be. I think you could probably name it now. Injuries permitting, but yeah, there's a couple of question marks over Doherty's fitness. Maybe Collins coming in as well, hasn't played an awful lot of time at Wolves, but look, it's needs must at this moment in time. We're going to put them out there and hope we see what we can get out of them. But like I say, the lads, Collins in particular, are they going to be able to stay mentally tuned in for 90-95 minutes in that heat? I'm not too sure. But look, Ferguson, Obafemi at the top of the pitch, if that's how he does go, it gives us an awful lot of hope. But yeah, it's the work rate and the keeping the ball that I'm really going to be worried about against Greece.
The assumption, by the way, that O'Dowda will start, because he had played very well against Latvia and then got injured. So he was seemingly ahead of Coleman in the pecking order at that point. Now, I don't know whether he was in line to play against France anyway. Now, Coleman, as it happens, did very well in that role, sort of minding Bazunu, or minding Mbappe, down that wing. But is there a sense that O'Dowda has that position nailed down for Greece, do we think?
Possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if O'Dowda went in. But again, Alan Brown is really, really good. He's one of these utility players. You can put him in centre midfield. You can put him up on the left wing. You can put him right back. He's just one of these lads that will go out there and get a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So ideally, I'd like it to be Matt Doherty, just because he knows that position. He knows what he's doing. If you put in Alan Brown out there, he is brilliant. He can do very well there. But he likes the attacking side of the game. So just 1v1 situations. Like I said, these Greek players are not bad in 1v1 situations. So we're going to have to defend well in wide areas. Look, Alan Brown, it's probably a toss of a coin, but I just think with it being a competitive international European qualifier, I think you go with Doherty. And although he hasn't played the minutes, he knows what's required to this level. He knows how to get through. And even if it's 65, 70 minutes from Doherty, you throw Alan Brown on or a Dowda, so be it. But we've got to I think we start with our best players on paper and we fill gaps after that.
Yeah, and Gus Poyet is the Greece manager, and he was Brighton manager, I think, around the time. It would have crossed over at your time at Burnley and also with Preston. From team meetings and, I suppose the bits of opposition analysis you would have got as a player, did you get a sense of what type of manager he is?
He's exactly what you'd expect as he was as a player. He's very, very emotional. His teams are quite emotional at times. They play with their heart on their sleeves. So if we can frustrate the Greeks and let them run into the back of us, fall over, don't give them any chance to get to the ball, I think that will filter into the Greeks, really, really frustrate them. And set pieces will be a big thing in this game as well. Set pieces are a big, big thing in all games. They get overlooked in most games, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a really edgy nil-all draw, and then all of a sudden one of us go and score a set piece, and it's decided on that. But I think we know what we get from Gus Poyet. He's very, very similar to what he was as a player. Very emotional, with his heart on his sleeve, and he will have some tactical nous up his sleeve as well for Stephen Kenny. So it won't be like a flat 4-4-2 and this is what we'll get, come and break the Greeks down. It'll be quite a decent game tactically. So yeah, I think we'll get what we get from Gus Poyet. Having played against him, yeah, I think he's quite similar to what he was as a player.
Yeah, and the heat obviously being a factor has been discussed, Conan. And from your own experiences of acclimatizing to, especially in sort of like European games where you have to go to maybe Southern Europe, how difficult is it? How much time do you need to get used to it?
Yeah, it is difficult, and it's important to get a couple of training sessions under your belt, especially at the time of kickoff. So if let's say the game, obviously the game is in the evening time, so to train the night before at the exact same time would be key, just to, as you say, acclimatize to the situation. It's going to be difficult, like Keith said. It's all about the possession of the ball, and that's what the worry is. It's going to be playing 30-degree heat plus, and it's all about trying to keep the ball for as much as possible. If you lose it, you don't want to be chasing for too long because you'll just run into fatigue. The end of the season, like we said, there's a couple of players in our squad that haven't played many minutes. The likes of Doherty and Collins. Obafemi really hasn't played all that much either at Burnley. So it's very, very important that once we get the ball, that we keep it for long spells and frustrate the Greeks, kill the game. And like Keith said, if we go a goal up early, it'd be the ideal scenario for Stephen Kenny because we have players in that squad that can keep it compact. If Greeks play it long, we've got 3 brilliant centre halves that will deal with that. It's just that the runners and the 1v1 situations that we'll have to be worried about in those times. But no, I think I'm optimistic about the result. Greece haven't been on flying in terms of the form recently. They drew 0-0 at home to Lithuania, 2-2 away to Malta that's twice in the last 4 games. So I think we're getting them at a good time.
Yeah, and one other thing that Stephen Kenny discussed in his press conference when he was naming the squad last week was Caoimhin Kelleher's future at Liverpool. So we might just listen to what he had to say about that, and then we'll discuss, because obviously it's a huge summer for Caoimhin.
Caoimhin has never let us down either. He's a very talented goalkeeper, and hopefully, it looks like he'll be on the move this summer, and it can only benefit him because he needs to play games, and obviously he's been starved of games this year, and that's been a problem for him. And he's very, very talented, and it's hard to leave Liverpool. It's such a iconic club, but he's not so young now. He's 24 and he needs to play, and he knows that.
Have you spoken to him about that?
Oh yeah, we speak to him regularly over the last year, and he knows that himself. And he knew that a long time earlier in the season, and I think he's been in dialogue with Liverpool about that for a long time. And I think it's most likely will happen, you would think, in the summer.
Conor, obviously Kenny there talking about Caoimhin Kelleher. I think about a week before that, Klopp had talked about the fact he was more than happy to keep Kelleher at Liverpool. So obviously something has to give.
Well, it suits Klopp's purposes, I suppose, to have Kelleher there sitting because he wants a backup. It doesn't suit Stephen Kenny's purposes, of course, because he's placed a great onus on players getting regular game time, and Kelleher is really sitting on the bench almost the entire time at Liverpool these days. So yeah, I think it's time. Probably it feels like it's time for him to go. I know Hugo Lloris is getting out at Spurs. Maybe he'll go there, but it's hard to know where he'll pitch up. But I mean, the important thing is that he gets playing regularly. Championship or Premier League, I think it's probably more likely Championship. You might have a better handle on that, but either way, wherever he goes, as long as he's playing regularly, getting into the groove, because his form for Ireland in the last year has dipped a bit. There's been a couple of errors here or there, and he sometimes seems to betray the air of a keeper who isn't playing often enough and isn't as sharp as he might be. So I think it feels like it's a moment where he has to think about moving on and getting a first choice slot somewhere.
Yeah, and it's a big moment at international level for him, Conan, as well, because you're looking at it with Bazunu is sort of number one for now, but his situation at Southampton, he obviously got dropped in the run-in before they got relegated. Now there's a possibility he'll be restored as number one in the Championship, but there's a little bit of flux there. And Travers as well is sort of in and out at Bournemouth over the last season. So if Caoimhin Kelleher were to get first team game time wherever that is, it would propel him up that pecking order, possibly above Bazunu, but who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Conor said there, his Irish form hasn't been great over the last 12 months. And there's talk then of David Raya from Brentford going into Manchester United, and Brentford will need to sign a goalkeeper. So would they look for somebody like Caoimhin for there? So it's going to be all up in the air. You'd like to see him move at the end of the day. He was starved of games, even when in games where you'd expect him to play, he didn't. And so that's the disappointing thing from his perspective. He needs to be playing games. And like you said there, Bazunu going in at restored at number one for Southampton next season. It's in the Championship where you play Saturday, Tuesday, so you're still getting plenty of game time. But yeah, you want your goalkeepers to play at the highest level. And it's just unfortunate that Southampton got relegated, and like Alex McCarthy coming in didn't cover himself in glory in a number of goalkeeping situations at Southampton come the latter part of the season. But with Bazunu restored and with the games under his belt, hopefully that will stand to him next season.
Yeah, and Keith, in terms of options for Caoimhin Kelleher, where would you want to see him? Where would you expect him to land at this point? Because obviously, as Conan mentioned there, Brentford, there's a possibility of the number one slot opening up there, albeit they have purchased some other goalkeepers as well in the meantime, but there are a few options there.
Yeah, there's a few options. I think Brentford would be a match made in heaven. I think Thomas Frank at Brentford is they have this learning sort of ethos that nobody gets on anybody's back when they make mistakes, and I think Caoimhin would really thrive in that sort of situation. But I'm just thinking from a player's point of view, like, when you look at the players who will probably start against Greece, when you look at Collins, Obafemi, Doherty, these are players that haven't played a lot of minutes. So when Caoimhin knocks on Stephen Kenny's door and says, "Why am I not playing?" and Stephen Kenny's answer is, "Well, you're not getting enough minutes with your club." Well, how come the rest of the lads are playing? It has to be one rule for all, and not one rule for you and a different rule for somebody else. And we had it with with Duffy as well. When Duffy wasn't playing at Brighton, he was still coming into the squad because we needed him. But if you're going to throw that you're not having enough minutes, so you're not playing, I think that's a great rule, but I think it has to be a blanket for the whole squad. If you're not playing, then you're not really in contention, unless you're an Evan Ferguson or you're somebody like that. And I just think you can start getting little divides in the squad here if you treat somebody like a Doherty. You haven't played a lot of minutes, but you're playing. Caoimhin, you haven't played a lot of minutes, but you're not playing. I just think sometimes lads can go for dinner and start getting in each other's ear, and all of a sudden something can just spark out or nothing. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope the lads aren't picking and choosing things like that. But yeah, I've been around footballers for a long time, and I know how they think. So I'm just wary of Caoimhin thinking, how come that rule's for me and it doesn't seem to apply to everybody else in the squad?
Yeah, and we'll be previewing the Greece match and also Gibraltar a lot more on next week's podcast, of course. And also I'll have an analysis of the Greece team with a Greek journalist and writer called Vasilis Sambrakos. Hopefully chatting to him this week, and then we'll bring it to you next week, and he'll kind of go through detail of, I suppose, everything from Euro 2004 when they won the tournament onwards, and how they've developed and what this Gus Poyet team is like. So also just to mention, we've got the FIFA Under-20 World Championships live on the RTÉ News channel and RTÉ Player, which is ongoing in Argentina at the moment. It's right at the semi-final stage. first semis on Wednesday at 6:25 between Uruguay and Israel, and then 9:55 it's Italy against South Korea. And just to note, these tournaments they're actually worth watching as well. A lot of future stars, sometimes they win an under-20 World Cup and then they go on and win the senior one. So Xavi and Casillas in 1999 with Spain. I think Brian Kerr's Ireland were playing in that one with the likes of Robbie Keane, Damien Duff, Gary Doherty, Colin Healy, Richie Sadler and Stephen McPhail were all part of the squad that featured there. Then Messi and Aguero, they win it in 2005 for Argentina, get to a World Cup final in 2014. And of course, as we know, Messi last year went on and actually got the winner's medal, Pogba, Umtiti and Thauvin for France in 2013. And then they win the World Cup, the senior one in 2018. And Phil Foden won it in 2017 with England. And of course, England haven't gone on to win anything yet, but that's a story for another day.
You're tipping Israel for future greatness, are you?
Well, they're only in the semi-final for now. Obviously, reigning winners, of course, are Ukraine as well. A number of their under-20s that won the tournament 2019 have graduated on to their senior team now. So it's always a good gauge, possibly even more than the 2017 or the 17s, because they're a little bit closer to first team football, or already playing first team football. And also we've got a live League of Ireland match between Derry and Bows on RT2 and the RT Player this Friday at 7:35. But in terms of the weekend results, and obviously it was a bank holiday weekend, so there was action on Friday and Monday. On Friday, Bows beat Sligo Rovers 2-0. Derry and Shelburne drew 0-0. Cork City won 1-0 at Drogheda United. Shamrock Rovers beat Dundalk 2-0 despite being down to 10 men. And then St. Pat's beat UCD 3-1. On Monday, Cork City beat Bows 2-1. Dundalk won 4-1 against UCD, with Hoban getting a hat-trick and also equaling the club's all-time record in terms of goals. And then Shamrock Rovers winning 3-0 at Sligo Rovers. Aaron Green continuing his form from Friday with another goal, and Rory Gaffney with a brace as well. And then St. Pat's beat Derry City 4-1, and Shelburne came from a goal down to beat Drogheda United 3-2. And Keith, I know you were at Richmond Park for the St. Pat's win over Derry City, and a very impressive one at that. But I want to talk about Jay McGrath first, because his goal was brilliant, but then also the ball over the top for Owen Doyle was just a class pass as well.
Yeah, well, I think you've been a little bit polite calling it a class pass. I think he just lumped it over the top and hoped for the best. But look, Owen Doyle reads it, and that's what I always say to defenders: if you put your head down and you have a striker who reads it and runs, you're getting a jump on the defender, and that's exactly what happened. But even his goal, I thought his goal was excellent, because Derry were really solid in their shape. And Diallo, he goes to, like he's about to play it out to the left wing. Diallo takes a step to the left and he just drives through the middle. Then you're looking for Cameron Dummigan to go and get in his face. He's a yard or so off it, and the two centre-halves just don't step in. He takes the shot on, you're thinking, it's a decent strike, but I still think Marsh should save it in the goal. And I think that was a huge moment in the game when Pats hit the back of the net, because there wasn't an awful lot in it. It was very, very scrappy in the middle of the pitch, not an awful lot of room. And I thought Pats were brilliant. I went to the UCD game on Friday night, and I thought Pats were good, but I more so put it down to UCD being very, very poor, that Pats were able to dominate. And so this was a big test for Pats. I thought they were excellent. Chris Forrester again, and I say it all the time, if Chris Forrester's on song, Pats are generally on song. And you see his header. I'm forever telling my young lads that if you go outside the width of the goal, it's so hard to score the goal. Percentages are that if you're in the width of the goal, you have a better chance of scoring. And his run actually takes him outside the post. So to be able to redirect that header into the far corner was brilliant. But yeah, I was quite disappointed with Derry, I have to say. I thought Pat's press was really, really good. They were setting little traps all over the pitch, and every time Derry tried to come through the middle, there was two or three bodies just snapping at the heels. And you see the Doyle goal, the Mark Doyle goal towards the end. He goes and wins the ball on the halfway line, and no Derry player can recover. He's already in one-on-one. You're thinking, this is just so poor from a Derry point of view, because I came there and I was expecting an awful lot from Derry with the talent they have on the pitch. I know Patrick McElhenney went off injured, but he was on there for a good chunk of the game, and he wasn't really dictating an awful lot. So I think that was probably the main battle there, Forrester against McElhenney, and Forrester came out on top, which obviously helped Pats get out on top. But I think under John Daly, that's 6 wins in 7 games now, and even the Shamrock Rovers game they lost. There was a 3-2 game, and Pats were well in that, could have easily nicked the draw, swung a couple of punches in it. So I think it's been really, really good. But I've seen a lot of outstanding individual performance. Sam Curtis was brilliant. Jamie Lennon in the middle of the pitch was really, really good. Owen Doyle's movement with Mark Connolly on his back all the time was really good. But I've been going to every Pats home game, a couple of away games now for about 2 years, and that's probably the best I've seen them as a team, as a unit. The way they move the pitch, every now and then Connolly would boom a big diag to the other side of the pitch, and Pats would just slide across. They wouldn't get flustered. They wouldn't start running like headless chickens. They would move really well as a unit. And every time the ball went 2 or 3 yards backwards, they were pushing up straight away. And every now and then, Derry did flick one over the top, but they never got any change over whatsoever. I thought Pats defensively was the best I've seen them, and obviously they've an awful lot of individual talent on the pitch that can go and hurt teams as well.
Yeah, I might get both of your thoughts, yourself and Conan, just in regards to what John Daly has changed, because I know it's small tweaks, and also there's injuries that have played a part in why certain players have been getting a run in the team. But I might start with you, Keith. Just since he's come in and since he first took over as caretaker, what has he tweaked? Because I know they're not major changes, but they're small tweaks.
No, not major changes. I think the big one for me is that Pats sometimes have really, really comfortable possession on their own back line, and they will just recycle it around the centre midfield to the centre halves, out to the left back. It'll come back around, and they get the chance to play forward, but they tone it down. And like they did to Derry yesterday, they're setting traps and that they know when to go. But now Pats, they get the ball left back, they get the ball right back, and they're turning teams. They're turning teams for 5-10 minutes. And no teams want to run towards their own goal. And this is not long ball football. This is playing long balls with a view to being able to play football 5 minutes down the line. So you're getting teams to back off. So there's been little tweaks with John Daly, but the big one for me is the work rate. And I referenced yesterday at half time in the game. Pats' intensity, Pats' pressure was brilliant. I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to do it for 90, 95 minutes in the game. As it was, their fitness levels were brilliant. And when you think it's even more impressive when you think of Joe Redmond. Played every minute of every game last season. Brzezowski as well is injured now. I don't want to call them second choice centre halves, but they wouldn't be the first name on the team sheet if the other two lads were fit. So I think it's been really, really impressive by Pats. And they've got Drogheda now on Friday. If they can go and beat Drogheda going into the break, 7 wins from 8 games under John Daly, I think we can all excuse a loss to Shamrock Rovers given how good they are. So it's been brilliant. And like you say, it's little tactical tweaks. And I think when you motivate the dressing room, when you get them running through brick walls, when you get Jamie Lennon just breaking up everything that Derry are throwing at you, you have every chance to go and win the game. And I had question marks over Pats defensively. I didn't think there was a lot in the both teams in an offensive manner, but defensively I thought Derry were a little bit more solid than Pats, but that wasn't the case yesterday. I thought Pats defensively were brilliant.
Yeah, and Conan, similarly, just on obviously the confidence is coursing through them with momentum, but at the same time, what have you noticed about some of the things John Daly has done at this very early juncture in his tenure?
Yeah, and at the start, like you're looking at previous times where an assistant has taken over the reins and may not have worked out as well as it has done. Now, I know it's still very, very early, but obviously John Daly saw the potential of this squad. He knew that they weren't performing to their maximum, and he felt that he could get that out of them, and he has done that. No question about it. Like, I'm looking at that defence yesterday. Sam Curtis, who's been excellent, by the way, Noah Lewis, Jay McGrath, Anto Breslin, coming up against Duffy, Graydon, and King Kavanagh, and you're just expecting them Derry to really push on against that back four, considering you're missing Tom Gravosti, you're missing Joe Redmond, and Pats were so comfortable in the game. Tactically, really, really good. And like Keith said, I think the thing that I've seen now, Keith has been to a lot more games than I have, but in terms of the work rate that I've seen from Pats, it's increased tenfold since John has come in. So we noticed that they weren't working hard enough, and he's rectified that really, really well. And they're scoring goals, you know. And I've been at a couple of games over the last couple of weeks, and that haven't involved Pats, and I've been thinking that the League of Ireland is starting to look a bit flat in terms of, like, players aren't starting to go 1v1 against players. They're not willing to take them on, and I'm thinking, is it because of statistical stuff that they're not doing that? They don't want to see that they've been dispossessed or anything like that, and it's infuriating sometimes when people get the ball and they're not running at players and being direct and going at them. But with Pats and in the clips that I've seen, they're really getting at the defenders. They're working really, really hard. And the fourth goal sums it up, the way Mark Doyle just wins the ball in midfield, drives forward, really, really poor defensively, but gets through and finishes off a fine goal and puts the icing on the cake for Pats. So yeah, it's the small tweaks. And funnily enough, actually, what Kravosti said in an interview there last week was really evident, in the sense that he was saying that we all wanted John Daly to get the job. We were hoping that he would get it. So the players are behind him, and it's working really, really well.
Yeah, and then on the other side of it, obviously Derry unravelled a bit on the Monday night, and the result at home, the 0-0 draw with Shells, probably, look, their home, we know their home form has been an issue, probably as much to do with that pitch that they have up there, but it's they would have had high expectations this season, but it just seems they're a little bit off it for the moment.
Yeah, they need a break, Raf. I think with the injuries that they have, like Cameron Dumigan obviously gone off late in the game, McElhenney as well, Duffy went off at halftime. They're their three best players. I think their strikers haven't performed in the sense of putting the ball in the back of the net enough times. Like McGonigal is in and out of the team, King Kavanagh in and out of the team. So you want a player that get the likes of Hubin, Gaffney, that will just score goals week in, week out, and it's not happening for Derry City. And reading reports of some people putting pressure on Rory Higgins, but we've got to remember that it's been a really, really, really tough year. There's no excuses for that in professional football. But having said that, it is extenuating circumstances going on. And he mentioned in a report with Dan McDonnell in the Independent there over the last couple of days how life has been really, really hard, and trying to focus on football, and that's going to have an impact. But also the injuries to key players has been absolutely massive, like I've mentioned. And goal scorers not performing is huge, but they've missed Mark Connolly. He's come back. Obviously didn't cover himself in glory yesterday in the game. I thought he had a poor game, especially for the second goal where the ball went in behind and Owen ran onto. But yeah, I think Derry just need to break, a few more reinforcements, and go again.
Yeah, and Conor, we've the live game, as I mentioned earlier, between Bows and Derry, and like they met a few weeks ago at Dalymount, and Derry won away from home on that day, but that becomes a much bigger game now this Friday, because Bows had a mixed weekend with a good win against Sligo Rovers, but then losing a Cork, and obviously Derry needing a bit of a kickstart before the break.
Yeah, it's worth noting, Conan talking about Rory Higgins there, his comments were fairly blunt after the game last night. He were words like unacceptable and gut-wrenching, and he apologised to the supporters for the performance. It's hard to it's hard to recall now that they were top of the table about 10 days ago, really, because they're after slipping 4 behind. That's 1 point from 3 games, and Shamrock Rovers have sped 4 points clear, and it looks a bit strung out at the top now. Yeah, it's a very big game, and their home form has been really extremely poor. I think they've won 4 out of 10 so far, which drawn 3, last 3, which is poor home form for a team challenging for the title. Obviously, I mean, we saw them. They were televised against Shamrock Rovers at home several weeks ago, and they were totally outclassed, I thought. I mean, Shamrock Rovers looked far superior in every respect. Jack Byrne in particular ran the game. Even their 2-1 win in Tala was at the start of the season was fairly fortuitous. You do get the sense that Shamrock Rovers gave everyone a chance with their sort of scratchy start to the season this year, and a lot of cards flashing their way, and they're dropping points here and there, but no one has really grabbed the initiative. Derry haven't been able to, with everything going on there, and you feel that Rovers are kind of spinning their wheels at the moment, and they're gonna break free soon and run away from everyone. Sickening loss for Bows as well, given the circumstances late last night, equalising so late and then conceding immediately. You don't want to be encouraging clubs to dispense with managers willy-nilly, but it does seem that Cork and Pats are a very good advertisement for moving a manager along mid-season, because Cork have won 4 in a row now, having made a pretty poor start to the season, and they're still second bottom, I believe, but that's 4 wins in a row, so their season has really turned around as well.
Yeah, and just on Cork, Keith, I mean, as Conor said, they're on a roll, and I guess what's exemplified by it is Bows equalise, and then like a minute later they respond and Kresic gets the winner. And I'd imagine a few weeks back, before they started this run, that they might have actually been that crestfallen, they might have conceded another.
It was great. They showed a great bit of backbone in the game when the equaliser went in. You thought, well, at least they've had a goal. But yeah, to go and nick it towards the end was brilliant from them. And It was great. One of my old mates, Liam Buckley, has gone in there now as well. Conan obviously knows him very well. So I'm happy for Cork to be able to do that. And, there has to be an air of realism about this. If Cork finish ninth in the league, they'll be delighted. And at the minute, I think they just jumped over Drogheda last night, did they? But actually eighth in the league at the minute. So yeah, they're probably punching a little bit above their weight. But like I said, if they can avoid automatic relegation, which it looks like UCD are going to be taking that, so yeah, I think it's been brilliant from Cork so far. But it's a long, long, hard season, and I do see them getting detached at the bottom with UCD. But like I say, staying out of the automatic relegation, which is the remit for the season for them.
Yeah, and whereas Conan Shamrock Rovers has discussed there, they've I think as Conor said, the wheels are spinning, and then they might pull away. Although I think I said that a few weeks ago, and then they lost 2 games in a row, so I might be jinxing them. But Aaron Green probably shows their depth. I mean, 2 goals against Dundalk. When they're also, and in between those goals, obviously they go down to 10 men with Ronan Finn getting sent off, and then he adds another goal against Sligo Rovers as well. So it just goes to show how much depth they have. So if a couple of players aren't performing, Green, who hasn't had that many opportunities this season, can come in and hit the ground running.
That's what you get with a player like Aaron Green. Played with him for a number of times up at Pats, and he's one of those players that just is an ultimate professional. He does his work off the pitch. So no matter if he doesn't have minutes under his belt, he'll always be sharp coming on. And his 2 goals against Dundalk were fantastic. Obviously, the first one was a bit fortuitous. I don't know if it was going wide, but before it got the touch off Shepherd. But second one was a really, really good finish. And again, scoring yesterday as well. So it's great for Aaron and for Stephen Bradley to be able to know that there's players like Aaron Green that mightn't, I'm not saying that they're going to be happy sitting on the bench, but they're going to come on and they're going to give their all. There's not going to be huffing or puffing when they're not playing. But yeah, a really, really good bank holiday weekend for Shamrock Rovers. Obviously the 2-0 win at home to Dundalk and live on telly on Friday, and then a magnificent 3-0 win. But I don't think Sligo laid a glove on them by all accounts. Really, really easy performance. The 2 quick fire goals killed it for Rory Gaffney, making it 7 for the season for him. So he's starting to hit the ground running. But I've noticed, like, they obviously had their suspensions from the previous week against Cork, and they made a couple of changes, 3 changes to Friday's night's game to Monday's game, and still didn't have Burke, Hoare, or Burt starting either game. So the strength and depth in that squad is frightening, and they're well able to manage the situation really, really well. And with UCD on Friday, it kind of gives them a nice game heading into the break. But do they want it?
Yeah, and Sligo just noticeably, they did win before the weekend, but they've only scored 1 goal in their last 6 games, and they have Shells next, who don't usually. Obviously Shells conceded a couple of goals against Rada, but usually they don't concede too many. So there's an issue there, other than say Max Mata being in brilliant form at the start of the season. Getting goals in general, especially more recently, has been a bit of an issue for them.
There's too much reliance on him, Raf. Like, you have Fabrice Hartman that's got 3 goals, and I think you've got 7 other players on 1 goal. So it's just reliance on Max. And like, out of as you mentioned there, the 5 defeats in 6, and their only win came fortuitously of Will Fitzgerald with the deflection in the 4th minute against Derry City. Managed to hold on really, really well, really dogged performance. But in all the other games that they've lost, the 5 other defeats, they didn't score in any of those games, which is really disappointing. So if they go a goal behind, you're not counting your chickens that they're going to score. So that's disappointing. And again, is like Derry, is John Russell under pressure now from this? Like, Sligo fans are hoping and expecting Europe. That's the main thing that they want every single season. And with the injuries that they've had, like Carlo Sullivan's out, John Mahon was ill yesterday, he didn't play, Greg Bulger didn't play, so they're missing players too, like similar to Derry. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how they get on Friday, and then also if the break is it going to bring these players back into the fold and recover in time after the break.
Yeah, whereas Shells, Keith, they were three games without a goal, and then Sean Boyd, just when they needed it, they've gone a goal down against Drogheda last night, and he pops up with a real centre forward's header, and they'll need him obviously going forward in terms of having that kind of cutting edge, along with Moylan and Matty Smith as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. when I think of Shelbourne, if I was setting my team up to play against Shelbourne, you're thinking, well, these are going to be really rigid, not going to give you anything for free. You're going to have to earn everything you get. But on the flip side of that, they don't hit the back of the net an awful lot, so you can you can go and have a real go at Shelbourne because they are defensively solid. And like you say, don't generally throw too many punches at the other end of the pitch. But to score 3 goals, they do have an awful lot of attacking talent, but like I say, they seem to defend first and build from there. And if the other team don't score, if you keep a clean sheet, you've only had to score the 1 goal to win the game. And I think Damien Duff I think he tries to build his team on a defensive mindset that if we're defensively solid and give nothing, we've every chance of going and winning this game. And look, I've said it before with Shelbourne, this is their second full season in the league, and I think they're fifth in the league now, and they're absolutely flying under Damien Duff. And people will throw it at them as something that if they play 5 at the back, they're a little bit bored. And when you scratch the surface of that and you start getting down to the nitty gritty of the analytics and how they play, how they recover, the recovery runs are always sprints. It is really, really good stuff. Like I say, sometimes on the UI it's not great, but Damien Duff has them really, really well drilled. And like Conan just said there, Shamrock Rovers are playing UCD. What a great game. I think the Shamrock Rovers players will be thinking that, lovely, we're playing UCD. Nobody goes to Talca Park or nobody plays against Shelbourne thinking, lovely, we have Shelbourne this weekend. They know it's going to be a tough game. And that's what every coach and every manager wants to hear about their team, is that nobody wants to play them. And I don't think anybody rubs their hands when they know they're playing Shelbourne.
Yeah, and then Drogheda lost a couple of games over the weekend, but they have at least, obviously we've talked about them across the season and they've been very impressive. But Draper as well has been bringing a bit of cutting edge. I think that's 4 goals in his last 3 games, or 5 goals in the last 4. He's become a bit talismanic for them, Keith.
Yeah, again, Drogheda probably, sitting 9th in the league now. They're 14 points ahead of UCD, so I don't think there's any real worries about them going down in the automatic. But I think Drogheda are a club that they're on a bit of a knife edge. Are they going to go back down the league? Are they going to start fighting to go up? And I know times are tough. I think they're probably one of the only part-time teams in the league at the minute, so it's always going to be tough. But look, it is what it is, and what Drogheda do. They just stay in games. Even the Shelbourne game, they stayed in that. They stuck around. And yeah, they're 9th in the league at the minute, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were to finish 6th or 7th in the league. And I think that's probably all you can hope for. Like you say, you want an air of realism about this. And Drogheda, if they were finished mid-table, I think they'd be happy enough at the end of the day. And a decent team to go and watch. I do enjoy watching Drogheda play, I have to say.
Yeah, and Hoban at Dundalk, Conan, I mean, they go 1-0 down against UCD and then he pops up with a hat-trick just when they need it, because their form in recent times, even up at Shamrock Rovers, where they're up against 10 men, 1-0 down, but they don't really make an impression. Beating UCD, which would have been expected, it's still a big deal in terms of pointing them in the right direction. And at the same time, the hat-trick means he's equal Joey Donnelly's all-time scoring record. So a good day all round, both for him and also for Dundalk.
Yeah, and I think we need to highlight that achievement. It's really remarkable for him, considering that he went across England for a couple of seasons as well, still come back and to equal Joey Donnelly's record is huge for him. And he's, as far as I'm concerned, I still think he's the best striker in the league in terms of all the attributes that he has. He can finish, he can hold the ball up, he's good in the air, he's strong, powerful, and he's a leader. And he's been absolutely superb for Dundalk and for the League of Ireland. And congratulations to Pat on his wonderful achievement. But like you said there, it's their first win in 5. They haven't been doing really, really well, but they're still in the hunt for Europe. It's and that's what Stephen O'Donnell will want. They'll want to be in those European positions come the end of the season. And it was much needed win after the last couple of games. As I said, their defensive woes still not great. First goal versus UCD yesterday didn't cover themselves in glory in terms of Boyle and Shepherd at the back. They're away to Cork on Friday, which will be another test, considering Cork are on a magnificent run, 4 in a row. So that'll be a big test going into the break. But with Sloggett back, Ainsley back, Andy Boyle back, obviously Pat Hubin's back as well, Daniel Kelly, Paul Doyle, these players now are coming back into the fold. And Dundalk now are might go all guns blazing after the break with those players back.
It's a great link to Hubin. He's a direct link back to the to the first Dundalk title win of this reign. I think back in 2014 he was the top scorer, and then he jetted off to England for a while and is back. And it's he's definitely one of the League of Ireland scoring legends. I think he might have been part of the Dundalk team that pushed Pats for the league title in 2013 even, was he, Conan?
Yeah, he was there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think he was there.
Yeah.
But they didn't catch us that year though, Conor.
And a happy ending for Pats that season. But
yeah. Back in 2014, I couldn't even remember if I was there.
In 2013, no, you were 2015, Keith, I think.
Somebody's memory is still intact there.
But anyway, in the first division on Friday night, Finn Harps and Kerry drew 0-0. Wexford beat Cove Ramblers 2-1. Waterford trashed Treaty United 7-0. Bray Wanderers and Galway United drew 1-1. So the first time Galway had dropped points in an age. And then Athlone Town beat Longford 1-0 in the Midlands derby. And then on Monday night, Athlone won again 3-1 against Bray Wanderers. Treaty United drew 1-1 with Wexford. Cove Ramblers beat Longford Town 1-0. Galway United bounced back with a 6-0 win over Finn Harps, and then Waterford won 6-0 at Kerry. And what it does to the table, Galway are still far ahead, but it's now 10 points clear of Waterford. And then from 3rd to 9th, they're separated by 8 points, which is a smaller gap than between 1st and 2nd, which kind of gives you a picture of that league. But I was just going to mention Longford there. I mean, Conor, I don't know how
we're not having a good time. No, I thought losing the Midland Derby is always a tough one. I know it was terrible indiscipline in the finish of that game. I thought. Well, I mean, the victory ending Galway United's unbeaten run was a terrific night. A bit of an outlier, but yeah, it's a down season for Longford. You know, we're not really. Well, I suppose as you point out, you know that it's congested down there. So who knows? Maybe they'll climb up into the playoff spot. Very hard to miss out in the playoff in the first division, as we know. They might. You
need a goal scorer, Conor.
Need a goal scorer, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, it's very strung out, of course. I mean, 2 6-0s last night. I mean, it's kind of there's a real massive gulf, obviously, between the top and the bottom of that league. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And in the Women's Premier Division on Saturday, Treaty United and Sligo Rovers drew 3-3. Peamount United stay top of the table, but they had to work for the 5-3 win against Athlone. And then DLR Waves beat Cork City 1-0 away. Shelburne, the reigning champions, beat Galway 2-0 away as well. And then the derby between Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers at Dalymount Park was a 0-0 draw. And then after the game, Daryl Geraghty was speaking to Bohemians' Sarah Rowe, who has been part of what has been a very impressive Bulls side.
Yeah, I think the draw was definitely the fair result. Like, they're up there, you know, they're unbeaten all season. So I think just to be up with the best of it, I think today was great for us. It was a great battle, really, when you look at the game across the field. There was a lot of one-on-one, like it was a lot of tackling, I felt, throughout the game. Yeah. So it was like, it felt like everyone was just competing for everything. So it was a lot of 50-50 balls. But yeah, it's good to get through this.
Enjoy the battle there. Did you enjoy your battle there with Sylvan?
I did. The two of us were knocking lumps at each other. It brought me back to our under-19 days when we'd be at training. So yeah, it's always great to come up against a good player and to compete for every ball that you get. Nothing easy.
Not in this league, no. So rest up now ahead of next week. Hope to finish on a high.
Yeah, definitely. Cork next week, obviously back in Dalymount as well. So it'd be nice to get Cork at home. But yeah, you just can't take any team for granted in this league. I feel like the results have been different. Like over the last couple of weeks, there's been a few results that you wouldn't have predicted. So I think that's the exciting part about this league. It's definitely growing and getting better, and every team kind of has a chance.
Last one, just see your results in recent weeks. I think that's just the fact the new group comes together and trying to get used to each other. That eventually you might click. That's what happened the last years.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We've definitely clicked a lot the last couple of weeks. We have just been playing our style of football and kind of imposing our game. But I think we're also really well coached. The coaching staff are brilliant. They're excellent. They're high quality coaches across, you know, not only just Sean, but also the coaches in behind him as well are doing such a good job. So I think that would have shown today in our performance. You could see that we were well coached to play against Shamrock Rovers. I think that's really hard to break down. and really well organised. So I think that's a massive part to play in it. And then on top of that, I think the club have been doing so much, like even the small gestures of like making a big deal out of all the home games, it goes a long way. Girls give back when a club gives you everything. So I think in terms of that, like I haven't been at another stadium in the league where they put on as much of a show as Bows, so I think that's a credit to Bows as well.
All right, and that is Daryl Garrity chatting to Sarah Rowe after Bows and Shamrock Rovers drew 0-0. And what it does to the table, Peamount on 31, Shamrock Rovers on 28, and Shelburne on 25, who are ahead of Bows on 23. But we've also got Champions League and the final itself live on RTE2 and RTÉ Player at 7 p.m. on Saturday, and also we'll have a live blog on rte.ie/sport. And Conor, I suppose there's not a huge amount of romance around this if Manchester City win. I think that's generally the sense when you compare it to some of the trebles that have happened in the past, the build up. And I know like Johnny McDonnell and Graham Gartland were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, but there is that sense that it's a juggernaut and it's impressive in terms of what happens on the pitch, but it's not it's not as romantic a victory as some of the other huge successes.
No, it's the death of romance. It's entirely logical. It's the entirely logical outcome of what City, I suppose, have done over the past 10 years.
The death of romance on the week that Love Island returns as well. I mean, yeah.
I just said you weren't going to mention it, Ralph.
Unfortunately, I couldn't help it.
Love Island is definitely more uncertain of the Champions League final, I suggest. You'd imagine City will well, I suppose Italian teams have been known to pull it out in one-off games before. There's a great heritage and tradition of doing that. I mean, this is a very tall order, though, given how good Man City are. They've faltered at this stage in the past. Chelsea caught them a couple of years ago, but they seem to have generally built their sense of invincibility gradually, and now they seem almost fully invincible at this point now, with Haaland added into the mix there, and he's provided them with a dimension they didn't have before. Pep seemed very reluctant to go that route for a long time, but now Haaland is kind of integrated into the project, and they look a phenomenal team, obviously. And unless Inter if Inter pull it off, it'll be one of the greatest, I can see it will be one of the greatest defensive and cynical coups that an Italian club has ever pulled off. But I presume City will win probably by 2 to 3 goals, I suspect.
Yeah, and Keith, I mean, they got over what would have been always an awkward challenge in the FA Cup final, given it was a derby against Manchester United. And despite the superiority gulf there between the two clubs, and again, they only won 2-1, and it was probably tighter than maybe some people would have expected. But what are City's weaknesses, if there are any? Because it seems to be hard to find, and at least opponents are finding it hard to find sort of that gap in the armour.
Yeah, it's very difficult to see any glaring weaknesses really anywhere. The one thing, obviously, I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm not a Manchester City fan, but the one thing that I'd be worried about as a City supporter would be if Pep starts to tinker and maybe overthink things. And I think 9 times out of 10, Manchester City's players are better than the other players that are on the pitch. So if they work as hard as them, they'll win the game. It's as simple as that. But sometimes Pep just gets bogged down in these tactics. And I think if Inter Milan were to watch the FA Cup final, when you look at the likes of Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish and Erling Haaland, they didn't do a thing in the game. They were kept very, very quiet. It was Ilkay Gundogan that came out with the 2 goals. And the people who say it was a tight game, I don't really buy that. I know it was a 2-1 result, but I thought City were very, very comfortable within the game. I thought United struggled. The goal they scored, I didn't think was a penalty. I thought they were quite lucky to get the penalty. And when you think of Ortega as the number 2 goalkeeper, he didn't have a save to make. They didn't put him under any pressure. He wasn't coming out having to catch crosses. He wasn't having to come out, spring off his line. It was largely easy enough day for him. Like I said, I think the penalty, they got themselves back into the game, but it was largely down to luck, and I thought it was a poor decision. I know United fans will be screaming at me now saying we hit the crossbar in the last minute. It was sort of, helter-skelter stuff, pumping balls into the box, hoping for the best, and it clipped off the crossbar. But for me, I thought City had another couple of years to go with it, and I think if United were to get on the score sheet again and make it 2-1, I thought City had another gear to just go, we'll keep you at arm's length the whole time. And I thought towards the end, City actually went into just conservative mode, didn't want to run too much. We're trying to save their legs for the Champions League final. But when you look at Guardiola's reaction after the emotion, the outpouring of emotion, I think he knew that this was the trickiest game of the two. And that's no disrespect to Inter Milan. I wouldn't be surprised if Inter Milan were to beat them. The Italians notoriously very, very good at defending and can land a counter a punch. So I wouldn't be surprised if Inter Milan were to win it. But I think Pep looked at the two finals and thought the Manchester derby said, "One, if we win that, we've taken a big, big step towards the treble." And I do expect them to win it, but Inter Milan have it, and could Romelu Lukaku have a little bit up his sleeve for his ex team Manchester United? I'm not too sure, but I don't know. Will Pep start overthinking this and just get in his own way? Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean there could be the poetic thing of Edin Dzeko actually scoring the winner if that were to happen as well. I mean, I don't think well, maybe City fans would find a place in their heart to forgive him for that. But Conan, just on Inter Milan's approach, I think as Conor said there and as Keith mentioned as well, I think they can be ultra defensive and maybe they're actually even almost more comfortable with that in a game like this. But it's still, even looking at the system though that they're playing, I mean, Conte was their manager previous to Inzaghi, and he would have set up this back three system, and then Inzaghi came in and has evolved it slightly. So Spurs under Conte before his departure earlier this season, they did beat City in the Premier League, but again, I suppose it was a different time in the season where maybe City weren't quite as they hadn't hit the ground running at that stage. So I just wonder, like, how do Inter deal with this? Is it just sit back and, obviously there might be a threat on the counter, but just how defensive do they have to be? Is it sort of like Chelsea against Bayern Munich in the 2013 or 2012 final?
Look, I think what's going under the radar here is Simone Inzaghi has 7 wins and 7 finals as a manager. Now I know they're all Italian finals and they're probably favourites in them all, but he knows how to win them. And that's a very interesting stat. But like, I'm going to put my neck out here and I think Man City are going to win by 3 or 4. And the reason why I say that is because of the shape. I think the shape that Man City have is, I feel that they're going to, in wide areas, come to destroy Inter. Like you've Darmian, Bastoni, and Acerbi in as probably the 3 centre-backs. Dumfries right wing back, and I think in those situations you're going to have Darmian and Dumfries up against Grealish, who's in absolutely scintillating form. Kept quiet the other night by Wan-Bissaka, who's probably one of the best 1-to-1 defenders, 1v1 defenders in the Premier League, and Di Marco on left wing back. And I just think Man City's threat going forward, albeit Italians defensive minded, I just think they're just going to overrun them. I think with Stone's quality in midfield, the way he just drops in there and he played excellently again in that position and on Saturday. Gundogan's form as well. De Bruyne, these lads are going to want to step up. It's the biggest game of their lives in terms of club football, and I honest to God, I think it's going to be 3 or 4.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned the stat about the cup finals that Inzaghi's been involved in, and one of them was already this season against Fiorentina in the Coppa Italia final, where Inter got the better of Fiorentina, and Fiorentina now have a second go at it in the Europa Conference League final against West Ham. And what we have now are 2 teams, Conan, that haven't won a lot of trophies in the last while. Now Fiorentina are more recent. I think they won the Italian Cup in 2001 or thereabouts. West Ham have to go back a good bit further.
Yeah, but look, they've won championship, wasn't it?
Oh well. I was ignoring the championship. I meant I was thinking more of like the FA Cup back in 1980. But if it's the championship, then fair enough. Maybe if
we're going back to Trevor Brookings' time, where we
can't count that. No, they're in a bit of form now, Fiorentina, since that Coppa Italia final, and where they lost 2-1 to Inter. But they beat Roma 2-1 at home. They bet Sassuolo 3-1 away there last Friday evening. So they're coming into the game on the back of good form. They have the Moroccan midfielder Amrabat, who was absolutely superb in the World Cup for Morocco. He's plays in the 6, really, really good. And they have quality all over the pitch, especially in attacking areas with Ikone on one side and Kouame in the other. So they do have attacking options, Fiorentina, that can really hurt West Ham. And it's just whether West Ham can put their domestic form to one side and to turn up in a European final. And surely they can do that. They have players capable of it. They have players that have played it in big games and big tournaments. So I think this is going to be much closer than the Champions League final, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really, really good game.
Yeah, and Declan Rice, this is probably his West Ham swan song, Keith, but the rumour is he's going to your beloved Arsenal, potentially. Obviously, there's a few clubs, I think they're talking about Bayern Munich, Manchester United, a few clubs are interested, but A, it's a huge game for him, but then B, also, would you take him at Arsenal? Is he as highly rated is he as good as maybe, he's rated by some people in the English media?
Yeah, I think so, Raf, and it'd be quite rare you'd hear me saying things like that because usually the English media will really overinflate an English player, but I think Declan Rice actually lives up to it. The way he's played for England, the way he plays for West Ham, he's a defensive midfielder, but he can get the ball on the edge of his own 18-yard box and at the drop of a hat be at the edge of the other 18-yard box. He's a brilliant, brilliant ball carrier. He reads the game really well, and he's a decent passer as well. He's not bad in the air, so he has a little bit of everything. I think they're the sort of players that Arsenal need to be signing. You don't want the older players coming in 29, 30, 31. These lads, I think, have been there, have done it. I think Declan Rice still thinks for all the how good his CV is, World Cups he's played, and I still think he believes he's a little bit more to learn, which is what you want. You want lads coming in open-minded, but in terms of the final, I think these two are really, really well matched. I'd be very similar to Conan. I think Florentina will go there and they'll actually throw a few punches. I don't think they'll sit back and try and hit West Ham on the counter attack. They both scored an average of 2.4 goals a game, but critically, I think West Ham's defence is an awful lot better than Florentina. So I think it'll come down to West Ham being an awful lot more solid at the back and just maybe nicking it 1, maybe 2-1 on the break. I can see both teams scoring and maybe West Ham winning. I'd like to see West Ham winning it. And I've said this in RTÉ. I said it to Des, obviously a big West Ham fan. Where does David Moyes go from here if he loses this final? Because I know the Premier League form hasn't been great, but if he wins this, that obviously puts a lovely shine on the end of the season. But in terms of the Premier League, it's been very, very underwhelming. So I'm not even sure if David Moyes needs to win this for to keep his job. But like I said, I think it'll be very, very tight, but I think West Ham will come out on the right side of it.
Yeah, and Conor, while we've been recording, and this sometimes we get very unlucky that sometimes breaking news tends to happen right after we finish. Big Ange leaving Celtic to go to Spurs. 4-year deal there.
A 4-year deal is. I mean, he's done well there to get a 4-year deal. He seems like a good fit for Spurs. I know it was said that Conte was a terrible fit for Spurs because Conte sort of goes into a sort of nervous panic if he doesn't win a trophy every 6 months, so which you're not going to get that. You're certainly not guaranteed that at Spurs. So, I mean, Conte, he seemed to be driven demented by them and, had an almost a moral revulsion for the whole enterprise down there. Postecoglou seems far more humble and, willing to build something there, I suspect. So he's probably more suited to where Spurs are at the moment. I mean, Daniel Levy has made some terrible managerial picks over his long tenure there. This might be one of the better ones, hopefully. But big loss to Celtic. I mean, it'll be interesting to see who they'll get after this.
Yeah, and James Abankwah as well, Conan. I mean, he'd already made his Serie A debut against Bologna back in April, but first start and against Juventus no less at the weekend. And obviously, you've probably seen him up close at Pats over the years as he was developing and then getting into the first team. But and I think also today I heard he's been called into the Ireland under-21s, so huge progression for him.
Yeah, he got called into the under-21s today, Raf, and great to see that. And just even for his development, playing against Juventus, it's up against Milik and Chiesa. It's fantastic for him. He played an hour, he suffered a little injury and came off at 0-0. So he wasn't on the pitch when Juventus scored. That's what I'd be saying. So we kept a clean sheet. But he always had the talent to go on and play at a much higher level than the League of Ireland. And it's great to see him now. He's started it now, his first Serie A game, last game of the season. Now, has to have a good, very, very good pre-season and hit the ground running then for next year and try and get more games under his belt. But it's great for Pats in terms of the development that they've given him and the players at the club, and I don't think we say it enough about the work that goes on at League of Ireland academies, not just at Pats but at Rovers as well. We saw the under-17s and how well they did. So yeah, it's starting to see the fruits of that on a European stage, which is great to see.
Yeah, and Conor,
I think I believe he's the only St. Mel's College alumnus.
Yeah,
I'm waiting to confirm.
Yeah, that. I was going to say, like, he's probably the second most famous alumni of that school after you, of course.
After me, yeah.
Yeah. But before we go. Yeah, before we go, I was going to mention, obviously, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is after retiring. Again, another kind of Serie A mention at AC Milan at the age of 41. Obviously, this is the autobiography, and it's definitely worth a read. I mean, there's some of the quotes in there, I think, Conor, you were mentioning, where, they do stand out. And the thing is, like, as great a player as he's been, he's arguably a bigger cult hero figure, and you don't really always get that with players of that stature.
Yeah, he's a very wild card, enigmatic sort of figure. He was kind of felt like a Cantona of his era for a while. I know for a time he was even grouped in amongst Messi and Ronaldo, and that the perennial question there back 10 years ago between the two, and Ibrahimovic was even dropped into that by some people. I don't know, was he ever at that level, or if he ever justified that, but he was certainly spectacular player on his day. Won a tremendous amount of league titles in a row, I believe, if you include a couple of the dodgy Juventus ones. But yeah, he a great career, and a very long career, and a very one decorated by some glittering moments.
Yeah, Keith, I suppose a great character within the game as well.
Yeah, just I've heard some of these quotes during his time playing football. I remember Arsenal tried to get him to come on trial, and his reply to Arsene Wenger was, "Zlatan doesn't do trials." It's just crazy stuff. And yeah, I loved him as a character. I loved watching him play. I thought he was brilliant. His movement was brilliant. The physical, he loved to get physical with people, but he was very, very elegant as well. And I think, didn't he say to Pep Guardiola, "You bought a Ferrari, but you're treating me like a Fiat Punto"?
It's something along those lines. Yeah.
Unbelievable is to have that sort of confidence in yourself, to be at Barcelona and you're not playing and you're thinking, this is not good enough, I'm too good to be sitting on the bench here. It's excellent. And the one thing when I think is Zlatan, obviously all these quotes come out, but that overhead kick he scored against England as well was absolutely, but like these things just blow you away. And although he was a big character off the pitch, he done a lot of his talking on the pitch. I thought he was a super player. I loved watching him on the pitch, and I loved watching him off the pitch. I thought he was, absolute gold dust.
Yeah, and I think it's just been mentioned there, Conan, before we go. I mean, Zlatan, not just because he played at Inter Milan, but he'll definitely want Inter Milan to win this final against Pep City.
Oh, of course. Of course he will, yeah. Keith, I was just wondering there, Keith, have you ever played against him?
Zlatan, no, yeah. No, you're asking me these questions now, I have to start thinking. No, so he was late, wasn't he, coming to England 2017?
Yeah,
yeah. He won a Europa League, I think, did he?
I was even thinking international. But no, he was one of those players that you always look forward to seeing. If there was a game on the telly and let's say Sweden, like a World Cup or wherever Sweden were playing, you probably wouldn't have watched the game, but you were only going to watch it because Ibrahimovic was in the starting 11 and you just wanted to see what he would do. Remember his goal against Italy where he kind of hit it with his back heel up over the
in the Euros, Euro 2004,
phenomenal goal. And he was just a character, like, and even in his send off there where Verona were shouting at him, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the best thing that you've seen all season." Like, it's just his charisma. We'll miss him.
Yeah, oddly enough, a player who actually never scored in the FIFA World Cup at any point, played in a couple of them. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have the Under-20 World Cup as well, so you can watch that on the RTÉ News channel and RTÉ Player on Wednesday. And then, as we mentioned, the Champions League final live on RT2 and the RTÉ Player on Saturday, and the day before that, Friday night, we've got League of Ireland, Derry City against Bows. But Conan Byrne, thanks a million for taking the time. Keith Treacy, and also St. Mel's most famous product, Conor Neville as well.
Jointly, I'll concede that.